one thing that I really do love about some members of the social left is that many of the things that they say are moral, they will not engage in themselves because they inherently know they're not particularly moral. Now, this is not the libertarian position. Okay, the libertarian position very often is that things that I don't think are moral are still allowed. In a free society, lots of stuff I don't approve of, but that doesn't actively harm other people. It's not really my job to step in and do something about that, because if we all use our subjective preferences as to what is right and wrong, but with regards to things that don't damage other people, that's how you end up with authoritarian states, right? That is the libertarian position. In other words, I explicitly say that things I don't like are still legal. That is not the leftist position. The leftist position is only things I like should be legal, right? If I don't like your language, it should be illegal. If you say a thing I don't like, it's hate speech. If you participate in a religious service I don't like, we should shut it down. If you want to homeschool your kids, that should be illegal. We talked about this a little bit earlier this week. There was a Harvard Magazine piece about how homeschooling should be illegal because evil Christians are teaching social priorities that this professor at Harvard does not like. So the leftist position is not a libertarian one. Like, I don't like this moral position, but it should still be allowed because I have a different view of what government should do than enforce morality. No, the leftist position is the government should enforce morality. So, therefore, the government should only allow things that I personally like. Well, this has led to some very weird contradictions, and it leads to this very puzzled piece that I absolutely love from Mel Magazine. The piece was written by Ceci Kuwabara Blanchard. It is called Why Won't Woke Boys Pay for Sex? Bernie bros, male feminists, and good guy liberals all support sex work, but for some reason, they aren't paying girls like me for sex. 4 months before Violet, a 25-year-old transsexual with dollish cheekbones and primary color wardrobe, moved to Brooklyn, she toyed with the idea of holding a farewell tour in her lifelong home of Portland, Oregon. Her approach to putting a bow on her 20-plus years in a city, mocked for its liberal leanings, was to collide her two disparate worlds. Her friend circle of jewel-puffing, mulleted Bernie bros, with her recent professional foray into bleeping for cash. What if I put it out there that I'm available as a sex worker for people I know for highly discounted rates? Violet, now a good friend of mine, recently tells me over FaceTime, recalling the logic behind her maniac idea. She admits it was both a stab at giving her friends a last chance to F, while also raking in as much money as she could before she hit the Big Apple. Violet took to Instagram stories to vibe check these guys. If you're someone who supports sex work at an intellectual level, would you ever hire a sex worker yourself, she wrote. She assumed that her peers, millennial Zoomer cusps with art degrees and hard-ons for progressive politics, would be prime clients. After all, as youngish liberals, they seem to overwhelmingly support sex workers and the decriminalization of their profession, and they were right in line with those of others in their demographic categories. Despite stereotypes of Johns being unattractive older men, some research shows that clients of sex workers tend to have their first experience of paid sex when they're young, hot, and in their 20s. In other words, the numbers suggest that more of Violet's followers should have been down with paid sex, but that's not what happened. The woke guys in her social circle who responded weren't bringing the same kind of hurrah they had for the idea of standing in solidarity with sex workers, and exactly none of them offered to cough up cash. That left her confused. If these young dudes were politically rooting for sex workers and are in the period of their lives when they're most likely to first see one, why aren't they seizing en masse the opportunity for one of Violet's bargain bin bleeps or one of those friendly neighborhood sex workers, for that matter? Some have pragmatic excuses, of course. I don't have the money. I don't want sex that bad. I can get bleeped without paying for it, they DM'd Violet. But it's more than that. As two trans girls who keep leftist male hotties in their company, Violet and I both have observed that our peers can't get our politics straight. For one, these guys support decriminalizing sex work because they're feminists, but they also seem to not pay for sex because they're feminists. So they are so woke that they are all in favor of people being paid for sex. Like, they think it's perfectly moral to pay for sex, but also they think it's a little bit immoral to pay for sex because that might be violating feminist precepts. Because the feminist movement is actually confused about this thing. So they are confused similarly. Also, it turns out a lot of people on the left, the social policies that they proclaim are actually moral and decent and wonderful. They don't engage in themselves, right? So a great example of this, Hollywood is constantly promoting single motherhood, constantly talking about how single motherhood is not only a valid life choice, but a heroic life choice. That if you're a single mother, you are more heroic in some fashion than a woman who got married and settled down and had a family, right? That's the easy decision. Being a single mother and kicking dad out of the house because he's a bad guy that you decided to have sex with irresponsibly and now you have a baby, that's actually a brave decision, according to most Hollywood and TV films, right? That is what Hollywood promotes. But nobody in Hollywood actually lives like that. The marriage rates in Hollywood are very, very high. There are not a lot of single mothers in Hollywood. Why? Well, because it turns out that in people's actual lives, the moral decisions that they make are not the moral decisions that they promote. So there is a great irony to this article from Mel Magazine lamenting that, number one, a lot of leftist guys who say that trans women are women will not have sex with a trans woman because it turns out that trans women are not, in fact, women. And so they're very upset about this, right? They're very, very upset. And I find that hilarious. And then I also find it hilarious that the feminist movement has created such insecurity in feminist Bernie bros that the feminist Bernie bros, on the one hand, they're like, yeah, all in for sex work. Sex work's great, man. Liberation, liberation. Also, I can't engage in that because I think it would be somehow victimizing you. And I've been told by some feminists that sex work is actually demeaning to women and objectifying women. So, while I think it's gung-ho, go for it, me personally, no on that. No on that. So this holistic worldview has not been particularly successful on the left. So I am enjoying that. Is it possible that maybe this moral code does not stand up to any level of realistic scrutiny? Brad had only ever been with cisgender women, he told me. I was his first. Knowing this, I checked in with him multiple times throughout the night to make sure his heterosexual ego was still intact. I couldn't help but feel the whole latte flirtation and wine date was a charade to bed me, secure his she-male fantasy, and then return to his cis girlfriend. If he was looking to bleep a girl's male genitalia, he should have just paid a prostitute, ideally me. That's not the straightest thing. I'm just going to put that out there. Not the straightest activity. The self-contradictions in the feminist movement are extraordinarily hilarious and well-deserving of mockery. So thank you, Mel Magazine. I really appreciated that.